The number of people that I speak to when we're talking about protecting assets and making sure the children can inherit it, and worried about maybe a new partner getting involved after one person dies, or perhaps someone going into care or being taken advantage of, or whatever it might be, a lot of people's responses are either they've already signed the house over to the kids, or they're going to sign the house over to the kids. Now, if you're in that latter category, stop, do not do it. If you're in that first category, what have you done? Not a great idea, but if you're watching this, it means it's not too late to undo it. So a lot of people think it's a real quick fix. Just sign over to the kids, happy days, we'll live in the house, no worries at all, no problem. But that's really thinking very short term. You've got to start thinking a bit wider. What could possibly happen now to make this all go wrong? Well, let's have a look at a couple of options here. Let's say we've got 3 children. Child number 1 is married. They are now a third owner of the property which you and your partner live in. Okay. Now, child number 1 is now separated and going through a divorce, and therefore a financial settlement. When they do the list of assets that child number 1 owns, 1/3 of that property now is part of their assets. So, best case scenario, it doesn't affect your right to live in the house. It just means that child number 1 gets far less from the financial settlement because they've got, an extra X amount of pounds in their estate already because they're a third owner of this property. So they're going to lose out in the long run. Worst case scenario is that they can't afford to pay off the partner because they've got this extra money, and the property has to be sold in order to balance the difference in his financial settlement. So there's a real danger there that if you didn't have the funds to gift to child 1 to kind of get rid of the partner, the property could be at risk. There isn't that, we're not talking, we're not being, fantastical here. This is a reality. This really could and does happen. What about child number 2? Child number 2, not always the best with money, perhaps isn't particularly responsible, ends up going bankrupt. Oh dear. So now child number 2 owns 1/3 share of the property, doesn't have any money, gone bankrupt, creditors now coming to claim their money. What are they going to do? Well, great, you own a 1/3 share of the property, we'll have a chunk of that house, please, thank you very much. Again, they're probably going to want their money sooner rather than later, so if no one can settle their claims, the property would have to be sold, unless you could obviously raise a mortgage and do it that way. You're going to end up paying for child number 2's shortcomings, their mistakes, things like that. What about child number 3? Child number 3 isn't married. Child number 3 isn't particularly irresponsible with money, but child number 3 does have some problems, maybe with drugs, alcohol, gambling, whatever it might be. And perhaps they either have some issues and they fall out with you or something like that, let's just say, and they go, well, actually, I just want my share of the house now because I want to gamble, I want to spend it on drink or drugs or whatever it might be. Or maybe I just don't like you anymore and I'm going to be a bit of a git about it, quite frankly. And I want to sell the house and I want my share. So now suddenly you're in a bit of trouble here because you don't actually own any of that house. You don't own any of it at all because you've given it to your 3 kids. And if one of these children is now demanding a sale, you've got a bit of a problem on your hands. What if they start saying we want rent? You're living in it rent-free. You don't have a right to live in it rent-free because you don't own that house anymore. You've got all sorts of security problems going on here when all you've tried to do is make sure your kids receive your house as an inheritance. Furthermore, let's just say 1 or 2 or all 3 of them own their own properties. Well, now they own a second property too, which means they are now liable for capital gains tax. So any gain made on the property that you've gifted to them could be payable for capital gains tax. It depends on obviously the value that the property's gone up by and a few other variants, but the fact of the matter is if it was your main property, it wouldn't be liable for tax, but if it's your second property, then it is. So it's another issue that you've got to worry about. And then you think about things like inheritance tax, care home fees, whatever you're trying to avoid. Well, these guys aren't stupid. If you're living in a property that you've sold and that you're not paying rent for, you're probably going to find that they're going to treat that property still as being yours. Certainly for HMRC when they're calculating inheritance tax, because they'll class your transfer of property as what's called a gift with a reservation of benefit. So I've gifted you the house, kids, but the reservation of benefit is I get to live in it rent free. So actually, it's still treated as yours most of the time anyway. So the reasons you're trying to get away from are still present, but what you're now doing is bringing all sorts of other trouble into the scenarios. You know, threat of being kicked out of your house, evicted, having to pay off an ex-partner, all sorts of these things. It just isn't worth it. There are far better, cleaner techniques that you can do that will cost similar to the legal fees of transferring it into your kids' names. But quite frankly, you're better off doing absolutely nothing at all than putting it into the kids' names. So if you've learned nothing else from today, please do not transfer the property into the kids' names unless there is a specific reason for doing it. Please do not do it thinking that you're going to avoid any of these troubles going forward, because you won't.